Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I remember seeing trailers for this movie and stuff, and I didn't really know what it was or why it needed to exist, and I thought, I don't know. I wasn't really interested in seeing it, and then it got put on HBO Max. And my dad and I were talking about it, and he was like, "Oh, I have it on my list." And I think I'd added it to my list, and he was saying "Oh, I wanted to watch it, but I was kind of hoping you would watch it first to tell me how it was." Sometimes it just kind of happens where my dad will be like, "Hey, I hope you go," not ordering me to watch anything or whatever, but just kind of hoping I'll watch something first to test it out for him. And I thought you know what? Sure. I was I was mostly curious if the movie was gonna be good or not. And I was, I guess, a little surprised my dad was interested in this one, but then he was asking me because he was in the room when I started it, and he asked me if it was related to the Guillermo del Toro one, and I thought, oh, okay, that's why he's interested in this movie, because he thought that Guillermo del Toro had made both movies. Nope. Out of the two of them, no, I still prefer the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein. I mean, these are completely different things too. The Frankenstein, the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein is about Frankenstein and adapting the book and stuff. And this one, I mean, the creature is a character, but it's about the bride and everything, and is a completely different vibe. Even though surprisingly I did like this. No, I would watch the Guillermo del Toro one, Frankenstein, any day, but that's also because I really liked it a lot. But yeah, no, they're not related at all. I was trying to tell my dad about that. Actually, I'm gonna have to give him my thoughts after when I talk to him tomorrow. I'm recording this at 11:30. I just finished the movie because luckily I finished it in one day, but it's I started it while I was eating lunch, and then I did some other stuff, and then I finished the rest of the movie later at night. It just kind of took me a bit longer to get through. I wasn't gonna do a review. I was just gonna watch it, and then I was having some thoughts about it and started taking notes. I had to pause more and stuff. But yeah, surprisingly I liked it, and I didn't think I was gonna like it. I had different opinions about it throughout the whole movie. At first I started it, and first 15 minutes or so I was just oh no, I don't like this. And then it gets kind of fun. I think it's because it goes all over the place, where it starts out about this woman named Ida, and she dies. It's something to do with the mafia, and then she gets possessed by the ghost of Mary Shelley, which I thought I was going to be more confused about. It's still a little weird, but I think I sort of get it. But I didn't really like Mary Shelley as a character in this, but then you see less of her as the movie goes on, and that's kind of the point too. And then it turns into this crime spree sort of love story, I guess, kind of a Bonnie and Clyde thing, between the creature. He's referred to as Frankenstein, and everyone calls him Frank, and between the bride, who I labeled as in my notes as just Ida, because Ida, because she doesn't call herself the bride until the end of the movie, and when it's just the two of them and they're just having fun going on this big adventure, then I got really into the movie. And then I didn't really like the end, but then the end, once I got to the actual end of the movie, I was oh, okay, this is happier than I thought it was going to be, and then I was cool with it and stuff. But it got to a certain point toward the end, and I'm really, after all that, it's gonna end like this. And yeah, like usual, I'm gonna spoil stuff with this. I also don't really have a lot of notes. Actually, my notes don't even start at the beginning either. But I think that's okay. I think I can just mention some things that I think I'm just gonna do this is like I'll mention some things I liked or I had like kind of strong opinions about or whatever, and or more like I guess developing opinions, but also kind of my general thoughts. My favorite part of the movie was there's this dance scene where Frank he has this I like him as a character. I want to talk about him a little bit. I think Christian Bale does a good job as him. Where him and Ida, they're both so like completely different as characters, where like, you know, Frank looks like a little bit more grotesque and stuff. You know, he's like a corpse that's made out of a bunch of different bodies and stuff, and like everyone is afraid of him except for this like doctor character, not Dr. Frankenstein, but a different doctor. And Ida, neither of them are like afraid of him, but pretty much everyone else is, and he kind of has been like sort of like living in hiding for the past 100 years. He doesn't like age or anything, and the whole plot starts with him being lonely and going to this doctor and being like, hey, I want a companion and stuff. And everyone just kind of hates him. He doesn't even have to do anything. They just think he like looks weird. And then Ida, which kind of contrasts that, she's made out of like one body, you know, when she ends up getting revived, and she looks like pretty much normal except for these like sort of black marks that are on her face that kind of looks like ink. I didn't really like it at first. I kept wanting to yell at the TV like go clean up your like go take a shower or something, because it's not just like on her face. But then I sort of got used to it, and I was kind of okay with it, in that it kind of reminded me of like ink, especially because Ida's kind of treated by Mary Shelley, like in universe Mary Shelley, I should say, as like less of a person, more of like a character in a sense. But also it's like the thing that reminded me of like, oh yeah, she's like a dead corpse and technically like a quote unquote monster and stuff, and helping to remember, oh yeah, she's not like a living breathing person anymore. So it was kind of like a nice little reminder of that. I do really like the black lipstick. I think the black lipstick's cool, and it kind of like, you know, smears off, as you can see on the poster, kind of into the ink on her face. If anything, it made me wish she looked like a little bit more monstrous. Kind of would match a bit with Frank and stuff, but like, yeah, Ida looks more, you know, like not as grotesque and stuff, and she's someone that's like very extroverted and just kind of does whatever the hell she wants. And I was thinking like, oh, that's her personality, but also, you know, she more passes as like a average human and stuff. People aren't afraid of her or anything, so she can kind of just get away with doing whatever, and instead of like going out to like party and all this stuff. And Ida's like very confident in herself. Well, like when she's revived and stuff, becomes like very confident in herself. It also helps she like kind of has amnesia, doesn't know who she is. She doesn't even know that she's like dead until the end of the movie anyway. And there's also the whole thing of like Frank being 100 years old and Ida, you know, having amnesia and just being made. So they have like a lot of differences and stuff, and at first she kind of doesn't really care about him and stuff, but then once they end up like leaving the doctor's house and they a crime's committed and they're like on the run and stuff, then they end up bonding, and he eventually does come clean to her. But and I thought she was going to be more mad, you know, that she's dead, and that he ends up lying of saying like, yeah, we were like married and stuff before your accident and whatever. But it's like, no, they don't know each other, and he like asked for her to be made. But like, you know, they end up as lovers and stuff. And I like that Ida throughout the movie becomes more of her own person, but so does Frank in a way. Like he spent the last 100 years or whatever not really having anyone and just kind of keeping to himself and everything, and trying not to get in trouble. Like crimes and bad things start happening, you know. Ida really does take him on kind of the adventure of a lifetime. But it like gets him out of his comfort zone, where at first he's just kind of in shock, and then, you know, is trying to like get them to safety and stuff. And then they're just, start driving around in a car all over the place and shouting at the top of their lungs and just having an absolute blast. And that's, when the movie kind of just gets more fun for me. And that's probably the part of it I like the most. But Ida, I mentioned about her becoming her own person. I want to talk about like her and Mary Shelley actually, or I guess Ida in general. Like when she's still alive, you get to see a bit of her life. She kind of doesn't really have a voice of her own in the sense that like people don't really like care about her actions and stuff. Like there's this part at the beginning, like she mentions about how she doesn't like oysters and some guy like shoves an oyster down her throat or whatever. And then once she dies and then ends up getting revived and like possessed by Mary Shelley is kind of giving like controlling Ida, not as much as I thought she would, but also kind of trying to get Ida to make a name for herself and develop her own personality, which she does. And you see less of Mary as like the movie goes on and Ida becoming her own person until the end. Mary kind of abandons Ida and Ida just kind of has to deal with things on her own. And Ida doesn't want Mary there. She eventually gets to a point where she's like, hey, can you just like leave me alone and stuff. Which was good because even I was getting kind of tired of Mary Shelley in this. Of just like, man, leave Ida alone. Because it ends up manifesting as Ida kind of having these like violent fits where she just starts yelling all of these words that are like synonyms to each other and kind of acting a bit crazy. And that's, I think we're not all, but like some of Ida's like violent actions come from. And then when she's kind of not like in control of herself again, she'll kind of panic a bit and be like, whoa, did I really do that thing? Like there's this part because the movie definitely does get a bit like violent, kind of gory. Ida like rips someone's tongue out of their mouth and stuff. Like you don't really see it like the tongue actually being ripped out of the mouth, but like it's there and stuff. And Ida's like horrified with herself. There's like a lot of people that get shot, not gory as in like blood, actually a bit. Yeah, there's one part I remembered where like Frank like beats someone's head in and you do see it. It wasn't enough where it's like it made me feel like sick or anything, but I guess I do kind of have to mention about that. Let me just pause for 1 second. Okay, I had to get back to somebody on something. I just realized I said I was going to do my general thoughts and I'm going like in depth with the characters and stuff, and I didn't mean to, but I feel like that was like the strongest thing with the movie, its characters. But yeah, Ida developing into her own person and stuff was something that was also really interesting. I'm hoping that Jessie Buckley, I don't think I've seen her in other stuff. Maybe she plays Ida. I hope she gets nominated for like some kind of award. I thought she did really good, especially whenever Ida ends up getting possessed and stuff, and just kind of being able to like change her acting, her behavior, the character's like behavior and stuff so quickly. I thought was pretty impressive. There was things I was kind of a little bit confused about. I'm still not really sure. Things I would have wanted to see more about. Like Ida, there's like certain parts throughout the movie where she's hearing the voices and kind of channeling them through her, like the voices of like dead people and stuff. I didn't know how she was able to do that. Like I know that she's dead, but like Frank is too, and he doesn't seem to have that ability or anything. I feel like if anything it would make more sense if he had it rather than her, because like he's the one that's made out of like the body parts of like a bunch of different people, and Ida is made out of like one person. And then there's this whole thing with like these mafia people finding out, like they think that Ida's still alive. No one knows she's like a reanimated corpse or anything, like almost no one. And they're like trying to get back at her, and there's this like detective guy that knows Ida from the past, and these kind of things going on, and like Ida sort of gets involved with all of that, but I just realized she doesn't really like encounter the she, what am I talking about, she does encounter like the mafia people and stuff. It's at this party, but isn't like as much involved with her by the end as I thought it was going to be. Like Ida ends up inspiring all of these women to like commit crimes and shoot people with guns and stuff, and it seems like at the end during the credits they go to find like the mafia boss guy. I think they were like gonna kill him or something, I don't know. But it is cool that Ida ends up like inspiring all these people. And then there's this secretary. I thought she was pretty cool. She's kind of is going through like a similar thing as Ida, not at the exact time with both of their like character development and stuff. Where the secretary, she, isn't taken seriously. She's like the secretary to this detective, but she's like a better detective than he is and stuff. And she's like finding all of these clues and making more progress with the case. But like the detective and the police, like no one's taking her seriously because she's a woman, and she ends up kind of taking control of the case at the end. There's this one part where she's telling the detective, and she's really excited of like, hey, if we end up finding them, like referring to the bride and to Frank, like if we end up finding them, I want to get credit for this case. And the detective says like, oh, it's not up to me, and she puts on her sunglasses. It looked like she was gonna like cry a bit, and I felt so bad for her, especially because like later on the detective's telling her of like, oh, Ida was right about me, I really am a crooked cop, I don't stand up for anybody, and I just kind of do what they tell me to do. And it's like, man, everyone's having these problems and stuff. Let me see what else. I think it's interesting, like Ida and Frank, they like hunted down as these like killer monsters and stuff by everybody. There's like this one part where Ida ends up shooting a cop at the middle of this party. I don't remember what the reason for that was exactly, and she looks like immediately regretful of it too. But like most of the people she gets in trouble with, and her and Frank end up attacking them or something happens, they were all really bad people now that I think about it. There's like this cop that arrests her that like is like kind of using it as an excuse to like feel her up. There's like these two guys in the street towards the beginning that end up trying to assault Ida. There's this guy in a theater that is like making out with this woman. I think like I don't know if it was like even his girlfriend or not, but she's like not cool with it and wants him to stop, and he's not listening to her, and Ida ends up like getting involved and chewing him out. And it's all like male characters too. Let me see what else. I'm like kind of just skipping through a lot of my notes and stuff. And then Ida at the end of the movie ends up renaming herself the Bride. I mean, I know the movie's called The Bride and it has that tagline, which I think was like an actual quote in the movie of like, here comes the motherfucking bride, which I feel like is kind of lame as a tagline. I feel like it doesn't really tell me anything. But I was kind of surprised, she ends up renaming herself the Bride. I thought she would have chosen like a name, because like throughout the movie she's trying to remember what her name is, and she just find out that it's actually Ida, but then she kind of doesn't want to be Ida anymore. And at this point she's kind of not, but she doesn't pick the bride as in like the Bride of Frankenstein, like how it's normally used. It's just the Bride. I feel like I didn't really get it. I don't know. I mean, she does want to marry Frank and stuff at the end. It's actually kind of sad. He ends up proposing to her, and there's this guy that ends up shooting him, and it's like Frank was finally really, I mean, he was happy with the bride already, but it's like, they were gonna get married for real and stuff, and after everything the bride like loves him, and then he ends up getting like shot in the head. I got kind of upset about that actually. And then the bride goes to this doctor character that we meet at the beginning and says, hey, can you bring him back to life? And then these police show up and they all just start shooting Ida. I mentioned the beginning of this, I was like, oh, towards the end I got kind of upset about. So it was this. I was like, after everything, her and Frank just both get shot, and it's just kind of like very sudden and I felt disappointed. But then at the end, they end up getting revived. I do like that the last shot of the movie is a close-up of their hands. They're kind of twitching and they end up holding hands. So it is nice. They do like end up getting to be together. Probably presumably get married. I don't know. And then the credits of the movie, I thought it was funny just because I feel like I don't hear it a lot in general. The song The Monster Mash, it plays in the credits. That was just kind of funny to me. I mean, like, it fits. I was just, I think, also surprised because I thought they would have played, with the tagline of like, here comes the motherfucking bride. I thought, I don't know, there would have been a song that was like a bit more, I don't know, something that would have been about the bride or whatever. And then it's just kind of the Monster Mash out of nowhere. But I actually like that. I thought that was kind of fun, honestly. I haven't heard the Monster Mash in like so long, actually. I just remember like when I was a kid in elementary school, we'd have these like Halloween parades and they always played the Monster Mash. I do love the song. I'm not like trying to make fun of it in general, and it does like fit, they're like quote unquote monsters and stuff, but I think it was just such a surprise to me, and that's what made it funny. And oh yeah, I wanted to say I liked the soundtrack to this movie. I thought it was pretty good because like you get the Monster Mash in the credits. There's like some instrumental like violin music as well, which I thought was cool. I was wondering if it was possibly also because Frank mentions at one point about playing the violin. He doesn't play the violin in the movie, but he like mentions about it and stuff. And then there's this like movie star that Frank looks up to and gets to meet at one point, and all of the crimes take place at locations that relate to like this one specific in-universe movie, which involves singing. So you get like songs from that, a lot of like kind of old-timey songs, because it takes place I think in like the 1930s, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, I liked all the music. I'm probably gonna listen to the soundtrack at some point. If anything, this movie kind of reminded me of Poor Things. I feel like it's sort of a similar thing. Not just like, they both have like these female main characters that are kind of basically like Frankenstein's creature and stuff. But it's kind of a similar thing of like this young woman starting out kind of not really knowing who she is and developing into her own person and having her own agency and stuff by the end. I feel I like this movie better, probably because it was like easier to understand beyond things. To be honest, like Poor Things is a really weird movie. It's cool though, but I think in terms of like the themes and stuff and what I feel like the movie was trying to go for, I think I liked Poor Things better. I feel like out of these two movies, that's the one I gotta just like recommend more. Sorry, I'm laughing because I started this saying like, oh yeah, I recommend Frankenstein. Now I'm recommending another movie of like, hey, just go watch that instead. And I mean, like, go watch this movie. I'm not like saying not to or anything. I liked it, but I feel like there's other movies that are sort of related, adjacent, that kind of do some of this better. But like, hey, it was different. It was like really different. But you know what? Like, props for that. I don't think I've seen a Frankenstein movie where they've had like the ghost of Mary Shelley in there. That was like kind of confusing, but kind of cool. I don't know. She ends up like maniacally laughing a lot, which happens in the credits too. It kind of startled me a little. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. Okay, bye.